I hated my wedding dress. It's really the only regret I have from that day, so I thought the best way for me to just move on would be to cut the sucker up and fix everything that I hate.
Lizzie McGuire, you are an outfit repeater.
I feel like this is a really silly thing to be hung up on, but I really did not feel good in my wedding dress. Now, ultimately, I did walk out of there married to the most wonderful man, so the purpose of the day was fulfilled, but this is still something that has really bothered me. Looking back on photos, I just remember how I felt in that dress. It bothers me. It still just bothers me. Knowing what I know now about why I didn't like it, and also having more sewing skills, I wanted to try my hand at fixing everything I hated about it. I remember what I really wanted in a wedding dress that I didn't get, and I think I can transform what I have into something closer to what I ultimately wanted. So the reasons I did not like my dress, it's a little complicated. Let me just say first off that the dress itself was well made. The company I bought it from has really lovely dresses. It's just that the style of dresses they make doesn't suit my body, and I didn't know that at the time, and so I was like, oh well, it's a pretty dress and I like it, so why doesn't it work? A little bit of the problem was my hair. I did my hair and makeup myself, and I think my makeup was fine, but the way I was styling my hair at the time, it wasn't that great. And on top of that, our pictures aren't that good. Our photographer was kind of new to photographing weddings, so unflattering photos on top of a dress and a hairstyle that didn't suit me. And the final straw really was that alterations didn't really come out how I hoped. Mainly that everything was too tight. I don't know if my seamstress figured I'd be losing weight for the wedding or something, but I had no plans of doing that. I probably gained weight, if anything. So by the time the wedding rolled around, the dress was just so tight. It's a miracle that it didn't rip until I had to take it off at the end of the day. So by the time I really acknowledged to myself that I didn't like the dress, that I was very unhappy with it, actually, to be frank, I hated it. I just had such negative feelings toward it. By the time I fully realized this, it was way too late. It was like 2 weeks before the wedding, and I just had to wear it. I just had to deal with it. I know I've kind of gone on for a long time about everything that I hate about this dress, and maybe it seems a little excessive, but I just want you to understand why I am chopping this up into bits and attempting to fix it. It's not just that, the dress could have been better. It's like, no, I hated this thing. I hated wearing it. I felt awful in it the whole day. No one should feel like that on their wedding. I don't know, this is just something I need to do for myself. I know that's a bit of a longer intro than I usually like to do, but there was a lot of backstory. So anyway, let me show you the design changes that I have in mind, and then we'll get to some dress demolition. Here is a sketch of the design changes I want to make. I want a fuller skirt, slightly puffy sleeves that end in a cuff, and buttons down the center front. Alright, so here she is, my awful wedding dress. So the bodice and the sleeves are a stretchy lace, and then the skirt is chiffon. Based on the design changes that I want to do, the first thing is to completely separate all the pieces. So basically, I think today is just going to be spent doing a lot of seam picking. Let us neither dilly nor dally and get on with it. Although I am kind of curious. I just need to see something real quick. Yeah, that's not even going to make it over my shoulders, so I'm just going to stop there and get to the seam picking. It appears the dress did indeed rip on our wedding day after all, and here you can witness me puzzling over the way this dress was put back together. Seam ripping or seam picking is always super tedious, and this took many hours. I recommend putting on a show that you're only mildly interested in and can pull your eyes away from for long stretches of time and not really miss anything. So it felt really good to tear this dress apart. Now it's just a pile of fabric. I have barely begun this project and it's already been quite cathartic. So I think what I want to tackle tonight is fixing the skirt. I basically just want to double the amount of fabric. So I went out and bought some. I did check the thrift store first. They had tons of like old wedding dresses I could have torn up, but none of them had the fabric I needed, and they had everything marked up so high. It honestly was just both more time and cost efficient to buy new fabric, because that way I could get exactly how much I needed and get exactly the type of fabric I needed, rather than just ripping apart old dresses at random and hoping that they work. But something I realized as I was separating the skirt from the bodice, I could not figure out why the dress was so tight around my middle. It had absolutely no give. So getting into it was basically like an Olympic sport. Because when I bought the dress, it had a very stretchy elastic waist, and the lining and the bodice were a stretchy fabric. So I couldn't understand like why there was no stretch. It's because when the skirt was hemmed, instead of shortening it from the bottom of the skirt, it was taken up from the waist. So then when the skirt was reattached, it was reattached with a straight stitch instead of a zigzag stitch, which would have allowed the fabric to stretch as it had before, but the straight stitch negated any elasticity that the fabric had. The things I know now that I wish I knew then. Because I bought a zipper thinking I would need to add a side zipper. Like if there was going to be no give to the waistline, I needed something to help me get in and out of it. But if all I need to do is a zigzag stitch to keep the elasticity, I don't think I need a zipper. I'm kind of just like mind blown, like realizing what was wrong, just seeing the way it was put back together that didn't make sense. And now knowing what I know, I'm like, I don't know if it answers questions so much as it just gives me more questions. Anyway, let's get started on this skirt. I used the existing skirt as a guide to create 2 more panels, doubling the total amount of fabric, and inserted these between the existing panels. Next, I gathered the chiffon top layer and secured it to the lining layer using a zigzag stitch. So for now, the skirt portion is assembled. Obviously, it will need to be gathered again, even more when I attach it to the bodice. It looks way fuller and swishier, and it still has elasticity, which is what I wanted. So here for the bodice, really all I think I'm going to do is just separate this where it overlaps, they overlap like this, and then just have them meet in the middle. So the bodice shouldn't be too complicated though overall. I think though for these sleeves, I wanted to add more fabric so that I could have a slight puff at the shoulder and then have kind of a balloon sleeve at the bottom. I think it's called a bishop sleeve, I'm not totally sure. And I bought some stretch lace fabric to add to it, but to be honest, looking at this fabric now that I have it home, I don't really like it. I'm not crazy about the rose pattern. I don't know, it just kind of looks tacky to me. It just looks like a really outdated tablecloth, but in stretchy form. Guys, I just realized why I hate this rose patterned lace so much. It matches the toilet paper. It matches the freaking toilet paper. So there was way too much fabric cut away from this bodice. It really should be able to come up much higher than it is, and the armpits come up way too high, so I think I'm actually gonna have to cut these down a bit, which I was not anticipating. So for now, I think I'm gonna mark where I need this to meet in the front, and then mark where I need to take down the arms. This is a great look. After cutting the armholes a bit wider, I tested out the new fit of the bodice with safety pins before finalizing it. I then hand sewed the trim back in place. So now I'm moving on to the sleeves. After opening them up, it's very clear I do not have enough fabric, and unfortunately the new stretch lace that I bought is just, well, frankly it's hideous, but also it just doesn't match this quite nearly enough, like at all actually. So I think lace for the sleeves might be out of the question. So using the leftover chiffon fabric that I have, I'm going to try using the sleeve piece from this pattern, but in an attempt to not waste fabric, I am going to do a mock-up first. And here's me talking way more than you actually care about the mock-up, so let's just move on to the part where I make the sleeve for real. To make the cuffs, I used fusible interfacing on the lace from the sleeves, then folded these pieces in half. Unfortunately, I sewed them in half along the wrong edges, making them too skinny, and I had to start all over again.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it.
2 hours later.
Once I finally had them done correctly, I gathered the bottom of the chiffon sleeve and basted it to the inside of the cuff before very carefully top stitching it. The next step was to hand sew the outside of the cuff in place and cover the raw edge of the cuff with the original trim. Well, it took an entire day, but the sleeves are coming along. So far, I'm really happy with the sleeves. I think the lace was a good choice to keep that original fabric. I thought it might be too much detail, but I think it actually looks really lovely. The only thing that concerns me, the inside seam is a little bit short. It might tug a little bit, and the cuffs can only go so high. But what's ahead of me right now is a lot of hand stitching, so that is a job that can be done in my pajamas while watching some more Bridgerton.
Yeet.
So after thinking about it, I just can't live with the inner arm sleeve being too short. That's just not something I can accept. So after all of that painstaking hand stitching and hand gathering and whatnot, I need to redo the sleeves. Just the chiffon part, the cuffs honestly are perfect, but connecting the two parts was what was tricky. It's gonna add a lot of time to this project, but I want this to be perfect. I should have plenty of fabric left. I have never been so glad to have purchased too much of something. Redoing things I already did so I can get them right. Redoing things I already did cause, I don't know, this project's like really important to me and I guess I'm having a perfectionism relapse. Alright, I know I look kind of silly trying this on in my sweatpants. But I don't know, I'm already getting emotional because already just looking at the bodice, this is so much more like what I wanted. And I made that. I did that. Okay, no time to cry. Time to attach the skirt and then do the final touches. So I guess I just didn't film any part of attaching the skirt to the bodice, which is fine, honestly. It was just several hours of hand gathering an enormous amount of fabric, basting it to the bodice, and then struggling to send it through my machine. You're not missing much. Anyway, using some scraps of leftover lace, I made matching buttons for the cuffs and the bodice. How freaking cute are these lace buttons? They are so cute. I then spent several hours in the worst posture attaching them. This is why I will always need a chiropractor. All the buttons are on. This has been secured to the front, and the last thing I want to do is I want to try to make a veil. I have no idea how that's going to turn out, but I want to try. To make the veil, I hand gathered the end of some tulle fabric and sewed it onto a hair comb clip thingy. Well, I don't really know what they're called, but you get the idea. It's done, and I'm so happy with how it turned out, and I'm so tired. I think the only thing I would change if I were to do this again is reduce the amount of fabric around the waist of the skirt. It's just very bulky and heavy, especially the lining. I could have removed probably half of the lining material. That really weighs it down and pulls on the top, but overall I think I would have felt so much more comfortable walking down the aisle in something like what I now have. It's just such a relief to me to see it closer to what I really truly wanted, and to know that I did that myself. Oh, and I do wish I would have taken some photos without the veil. The wind was insane and it kept snagging on every available thing to snag on, but that's neither here nor there. Charles's reaction wasn't as big as I hoped, just because he had just woken up. He's been on the night shift lately, but he did like it, despite his rather suppressed reaction. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I'm really glad that I did this. This felt really good to take this project on. It was very fulfilling. So thank you for watching and letting me indulge this impulse. And I'll see you next time. It's so windy out here, and my boots have no traction. Outlander made roaming the woods in a dress look way easier than it actually is.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh! The wind! And it was like this wall of leaves coming at me.